this is the second time I'm speaking on this. The first one was about an hour on the Jeff Mara podcast. So if you need more information or you want to regroup on that, if you just put in Victoria Sebanz, NDE, and then look for Jeff Mara, that was the first one. That was very comforting because I could sit in my house and just look at a screen and pretend it wasn't real. And have all my things around me. And this time I have some beautiful beings all around me, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you for making me feel more comfortable with this, because it's not easy. And actually experiencers of NDEs have some difficulties. I just kind of went with the flow with mine at the time. I just knew that I was going to be challenged, but I never connected with other people at the time. In fact, for the last 30 years, I have not looked at other people's experiences, and so purposely isolated myself so that my story would be mine. And I wanted to keep it pristine. And I didn't realize why I needed to keep it pristine, but I will tell you that in 2017, and I can say this in this room, I was at the Plum Tree in LA with a friend of mine, and so we were at this restaurant, which is now closed post-COVID, after it had its life of 30 years. We were sitting in these booths, and 6 beings came in, very tall, illuminated beings, 3 on the left and 3 on the right. And she couldn't see them, but she could feel them, and I could both see and feel them. And they had asked, we had just been having a conversation on what we were doing, and I said I was doing this book on the politics of the body. And that's when they came in, and they asked, when are you doing that book? And then I realized I was supposed to be doing a different book. And so I started in 2017, she started doing little interviews with me, and we started compiling information. And at the same time, actually 2 years earlier, one of my students had been, the only word is relentless, in asking me questions about the paranormal or psychic phenomena or reincarnation and all of that. And she listed 40 questions. And then, so I realized I'd been being prepared for it. So it's done, it just has to be edited. And then there's another book that will follow, which will just be Q&A. So if there's anyone who has these experiences that wants to connect with me, I'm going to use the Sand Answer email. You can contact me on Facebook under my name, but you have to let me know what it's for, NDE. And under Sandancer, SANDDANCER99@gmail.com. And also put NDE in there, otherwise it'll go to spam. Okay? So, where do I begin? At 17. So at 17, I was living a typical high school life. I was a dancer, I was painting, I was doing some journalism, painting of the journalism room. I had done a lot of soul searching in my time, but at that point I was just enjoying life. I had a nice boyfriend, I had a sort of loving but dysfunctional family like a lot of people did. And I started having stomach pains, and back pains. Everything was not localized, so I didn't know what it was. My mother, who was a registered nurse, thought I had the flu. My boyfriend thought the way to fix it was to go and get me some Pepto-Bismol, which is this disgusting pink frothy stuff that's designed to settle your stomach. It worked. It worked so well that it took me to the hospital. It was immediately, I had a response to it, and so there was this huge warning. So my mom and my boyfriend packed me off into the car. So I was prone the whole time, in agony with excruciating pains. When we got there, they took me on a gurney and found that I had acute appendicitis. And I was just wondering how somebody lived with this, because it was extremely painful. And they said I need to go into surgery right away. I never really saw anyone at that point, so I just want to put that forward. And they prepped me, they had me have the anesthesia, and they had me count back, and at that point my heart stopped, and I flew out of my body. So I moved up to the top of the ceiling, and I could see my sisters in the other room, and my mother. So there's no boundaries when it comes to the 3D world. There's nothing that you see that there's nothing blocked. You actually have a huge 360 point of view when you're out of body. Everything was done from an aerial point of view. As an artist and dancer, I was noticing all of that, and I was looking down at this little girl on the bed, and everyone doing this frenetic dance, trying to figure out what to do. So I felt connected to her. I knew she was me, but she wasn't me. And so at some point I noticed off on the right that there was a portal open, and this amazing, warm, golden and white light of, was just calling me. And it was so familiar that I just had to go. It was like, wait a minute, I've got this, window of opportunity. So I went out. As I went out, I also passed different planes of existence. And I think this is where, now that I've had a chance to look, some people say, oh, they visited hell or whatever. I think you can get caught up in this in dreams as well. But different heavier frequencies and planes of existence where there are a lot of lessons being learned. People are doing things in a creatively conscious way. Come on in, come up front, and they're active participants in whatever the lessons are that they are learning. So if there is that hell, I would go back to that movie, What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams, and that is more of an accurate representation because the mind creates these scenarios, and they are designed to help and facilitate learning and evolving in people. Anyway, sorry. So I went past that. I was seeing some very sexual things, very sort of enslavement type of situations, and bumped up to the next things, just kept going past. And I just realized I don't want to even see this. I mean, this is happening in a millisecond, right? But I was like, I have no desire to tarry there. I'm going over there. So I wanted to go home. And I was very familiar with home. I was happy I was done. I was not feeling any yearning for the girl that was on the bed, right? So I was there, I'm going and past this beautiful cosmos, just beautiful stars shooting out. I end up going on this plane of existence to where I see people coming towards me. So now I've gotten to this sort of plateau, and there are people coming towards me, so they're backlit, and but also illuminated as they're moving forward. And one gentleman thanks to me because everything's telepathic. He goes, "Oh, I'm glad you're back," and I'm surprised. Basically, you're early. And I said, or I thought to him, I said, "Shit happens." Okay, now I never say that word. I don't say crap. I don't say, especially at that age, I had this absolute love of words. I loved to do poetry and things, and I just thought it was really crass, and I didn't even like that word, right? But, so I was like really surprised that that casual cockiness came out of me, and, but I laughed. I was kind of like, yeah, I'm done, you know? And so I went forward, and I was guided by two beings, and then, and I had a reluctance to say this at first. I don't know why, because it's wrong. You know, to say that who the being was that I then spoke with, but it was the one you called Jesus in the time that he was on the earth plane. And I knew him well. I actually felt like he was a friend. There was such a bantering feel with him. He was warm, he was strong, powerful, wise. There are not enough words to describe him, nor could you for most of these ascended masters. There's just not enough earth words to fit. And we started having a conversation. I was very familiar with the idea of a life review. So the idea that there's sort of this holographic film, and I start to see different aspects of my life. They start flashing before me, but I felt like I was contributing. So it's kind of like, okay, let's rush to this. You know, it's like, I'll show you that, here are some of the things I learned here. I learned about compassion here. I learned about, love here. I still have some anger issues here, or whatever it is. And in return, he was showing me the aspects of my family and that dynamic. So there were, he basically showed me the life stories kind of strung together of my mother and my father, what their childhood was like. And back in the Midwest, you really didn't talk to your children that much. Especially not about things like that. It was more, you're seen and not heard. The adults talk by themselves, the children play over here, which was good in some respects, but not for getting to know your parents. And but I was able to see the strengths and why my parents were the way they were, what their hopes and dreams were, some of the situations in which were pivotal to them, their growth and their pain. So that was really heartwarming, and it kind of stunned me, on a sense. But at the same time, I was like, oh, I get it. And it was like, I let anything go. I love them, and but I'm ready to come home. And at the same time that Jesus said, well, there's things that you did promise that you would do. And I was like, what? And so he then showed me some of those things, and some of them were mundane. They were like handing a cold bottle of water to a person who was in like 100-degree heat. The blue eyes staring out, the sweat rolling down, the sunburned face, and I'm handing him cold water. Okay, somehow I was doing it through a car, I have no idea. Okay, but that one did come true. So there were small things, there were big things. There was a scenario in which I was supposed to help save somebody out of the water. That also came true. Okay, technically it happened twice. When we're talking decades later. The other thing was that he showed me that what my daughter was going to look like, and that I had offered and wanted to be portal to her so that she could come through and then be in the role of mother, because that's what she wanted to do. Right, so here I am at 17, now we're thinking about being a mother, only, I'm 17. I have no idea that this is, I'm not thinking in that mode myself. I want to be a dancer, I want to perform, I want to do all these things, I want to go to college, right? So, but at that moment, I'm getting all of this information. I'm like, oh, well, of course, I'll do this, and I remembered it at that point. And then I later documented some of this as it flashed back in downloads and dreams. And he said, well, you don't have to do it. You do have free will, which is crucial. I said, you do have free will. You could decide not to do it and you could stay. And I'm like, I'm getting all riled up. Well, if I promised to do this, of course I'm going to do it. And at the same time, I also knew that he knew that that's what I would say. So I said, okay, well, if I go back, which I will, I have to remember. Okay, and at that moment, I knew most people are not designed to remember. It messes with the choices that you make. It's hard to adjust to being here, knowing what you know, and trying to go through the 3D world, which is like a Monopoly board. At the same time, you feel these other things, and you know that there's so much more. And because that reality is so much more intense than this. Right? So I said, if and when I go back, I have to remember. I have to be a bridge. There has to be more people who know this, because I had a sense that the times were going to get even more intense, and we needed to evolve. We need to evolve. We need to protect the planet. We needed to protect and respect the other living things on the planet. Okay, and then, by the way, going back to planet Earth is only one choice, right? But it's kind of like the Harvard or Stanford of choices. Okay, because it's really intense, and you learn a lot in a short period of time, but it's not for everybody, right? Some people prefer a longer time and a little bit more ease and grace, so jumping right in. So at that point, another ascended master, if you will, came in, and he was far older. I don't know how, it was just, you could just tell he was just ancient. And he said, he had a very, very paternal feel, which is, again, very unfamiliar to me, because I had known my father as a, that paternal role when I was younger, but I pretty much kind of forgotten that. And, but I could really sense him. And I said, yes, I need to go back and I need to remember. And he said, okay. And I got the sense that there would be things that I would not remember just because it would be too difficult. Like the sights, the sounds of being in this place. And I know already the visuals on some of the buildings, the illuminated spaces, the Akashic records, the Hall of Records were starting to fade at that point. And some of the things that I had seen, like these beautiful green grasses and animals and people in white robes communing together telepathically, truly heaven on that sense, was completely faded away. And in particular, the haunting music, I think, because I'm so drawn to music, that that had to go. So what they called, I guess, or what I ended up calling blanket of forgetfulness, was kind of put over, and then I left with the two guides that I first came in with, and it started to drop off into this indigo night, just all the beautiful cosmos, and I didn't feel like alone and scared. I felt cradled, comforted, and floated down. And literally it was like going from, this huge sense of the universe into this little, almost like a computerized landscape, or like when you come out of a plane, right? You're looking at the stars in the sky, and then you come down, you see the buildings, you see the city, you see the hospital room, and then you see this little girl on the bed, sleeping peacefully. only this time I saw my sisters in the other room with my mother, and the doctor, who was this tiny, very small Asian man, and he had this little kidney-shaped bald spot on the top of his head, which I never would have seen because I was prone the whole time. But as I saw him, I could feel the measure of his heart, the weight of his heart. Everything about him and the way he was thinking was just for me. He was willing me to be completely well. There was no guilt, there was no worries about his, license or any of that for having my reaction to the anesthesia or anything. It was only about me. And that was like the weight and the measure of his heart was so powerful. And I just felt really, and I felt paternal, not maternal. I felt paternal towards him, which was very interesting at the time. And anyway, I came back and went into my body and recalling what they had told me. They said, you're gonna have some pain when you come back, but you'll be fine. And I recovered very quickly. But when I was laying in the bed, he was, saying, are you okay and whatever. And I said, I died, and I was just kind of trying to comfort him, with this flop of a hand that was still trying to function. And we decided we would talk about it later. He was very interested in knowing what that was about. And so after I saw my whole family and everything, we did have that conversation, and it changed the way he, saw his practice. Yeah, so that's the actual NDA itself. How's my time?
We have about 7 minutes.
Okay, so all right. So from there, I'll just say that I had about 2 years of trying to adjust to the NDE, and I thought I was doing really well. And if we have anybody here who has had an NDE, there are certain characteristics that you end up sort of having. I have seen one book. I have read one book actually since I finished editing my book, and it popped into my place, synchronicities being what they are. But it's by P.M. Atwater, and it's on near-death survivors. And I do want to qualify that when you do have this experience, it shouldn't be listed as a near-death, because technically you are not the same person. You're more of the person that you are outside of the 3D world than less. So you are forever changed because you experience so much, and for a lot of us, the other abilities get amped up. So clairsentience, clairaudience, the ability to empathize and feel what some people are feeling, predict events, help people who, but only with respect to them asking, so that you are consciously doing free will, and those sorts of things. I think I just got off topic. Sorry, there's also this one thing about that, and I'm sure other people experience this too, but when you start, either it's not channeling, but you play, you can sense the frequencies, you have more trouble being in the 3D world. So you're not flaking, you're just tuning into something else. So the messages that I got were plenty, and they were, they've been consistent. I've kind of used them in my art a lot. Everything having to do with that we are sovereign. We are given the gift of being sovereign, knowing that we get to be independent, but we go right back home, right? So we are all one, and yet we get this opportunity to go out and be individual and individuate and be creative and expand, because creativity and consciousness has to do that. And we all learn from each other the Hall of Records has literally like a book on everybody's life already, and not just this one. So if you're questioning reincarnation, if you do choose to reincarnate, there are other storylines that you have, but all the things that you learn. And it does come down to love is everything. We are in an urgent place right now to truly love each other and be compassionate and evolve on this planet. A lot of this is happening for a reason. If you look at the Black Snake prophecy, which is a Lakota prophecy, it says that we are all different nations to come together at this time, and we can create heaven on earth just through our thoughts. So our thoughts are precious. We can't be like monkeys in the ship, just reacting to everything. No offense to the monkeys, but we have to consciously create what we want to create, and we have to do the inner work. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and you want to do something, you just start with your own thoughts, and prayer is just as powerful. Directing your prayers, your thoughts, your intentions, and your feelings towards something is just as effective as doing something else actively in the 3D world, although they obviously work best together. And so, are there any questions?
They can ask questions in the hall.
Okay, great. All right, so that's it for now. Like I said, I am finishing up the book, and so if anyone has any questions, that they will also then go into the second book, because I was pretty much clearly told, and I get messages through very clear phrases and thoughts, and music often, that this next one is coming up really fast. So if you have any questions or you want to know anything, let me know. But parting thought, obviously there is no death the way most people are being taught it is. It's a transition. You go to a lighter frequency. You are still you, but expanded, which kind of brings me back to where you are right now. You have far more energy and light than you think you do. If you think you're in a box, you close and you clamp down that light. If you understand the truth, which is that you radiate for miles, and that's how, like, sometimes I'll pick up on people's energy, right? Because they can be a mile away and I can still sense them. Your energy is glowing and beaming. The light within you is everything. It's beautiful, and you are loved. Every single nanoparticle of you is loved so dearly, just for doing what you're doing, just for being who you are.